It is too windy to fly, so once again, we are recycling footage. But there's a look at the map. Those gusty winds still sweeping through the Great Plains, and we're seeing gusts as high as 50 knots at Dodge City, which is going to be about 57 miles an hour. 55 knots all the way back to Lyman, Colorado, and all the way over to Missouri and Arkansas. They're getting gusts up near 30 knots. Here's a look at the weather pattern this afternoon. We have a 997 millibar low in Illinois with an occluded front extending down the Appalachians. You can see a bit of cold air damming in the Carolinas where temperatures are still hanging on into the 40s. But out in the coastal regions, we've got temperatures up near 60 degrees. Cold front moving through northwestern Florida, and that mass of cold air, you can see that pushing all the way out there into the Gulf. Let me see if I can bring that up a little bit better. There it is, plenty of cold air advection out over those warmer waters. And if we look at the satellite imagery, yeah, we are picking up stratocumulus due to cold air advection, but it's not developing right along the coast like we typically see with very cold air outbreaks. In the western U.S., we see north winds spreading down the Colorado River Valley. That's indicating some cold air advection working through that area. Yuma yesterday reached a record 81 degrees, but we're expecting things to cool off just a little bit. However, temperatures will continue to be warm in Southern California all the way up towards Monterey and San Francisco for today. Up in Canada, we can see warm air advection from the Pacific, so we're continuing to bring in a lot of warm air and moisture into the western parts of the country. Not much Arctic air to be found if we go way up to the Canadian high Arctic. The coldest temperatures that we're seeing, about minus 22 near Coppermine. That's not really all that cold. And the rest of the air mass, that's pretty typical this time of year. So not much to be seen as far as Arctic air generation. Meanwhile, down south, wow, look at that, 91 degrees at Long Beach, 87 at LAX. Yeah, here's a closer look at some of those temperatures. You can see 92 out there at Camarillo near Oxnard, and we've got 91 at Chino, south of Ontario. So these readings were actually a little bit warmer than what the models had forecast for Friday. They were looking at a very slight cool down, but that's actually not what happened. So that shows you some of the pitfalls in using model data, and we saw that during the heat wave last summer. They just were not very good. They were constantly overestimating temperatures in the San Joaquin Valley. So there's the satellite loop. Looks like clear skies around that part of the country. But up in Utah and Colorado, we've got the snowpack in place in that region. In the Great Plains, it looks like we finally did pick up that dust, and that's coming from the agricultural regions of eastern Colorado near Lyman, Eads, Kit Carson. That's going to be right in this area right here. Let me scroll up so you can see that better. Yeah, that's it right there. And it's given us this plume of dust that's going south into Guyman, down to Stratford, Dumas, and Pampa. And very likely as the evening goes on, some of that dust should work all the way down to Abilene, maybe Fort Worth and Waco. Out in the Midwest, a vertically stacked cold core low over Illinois. That's going to be located out here in that part of the country. Out ahead of it, a dry slot working north from Tennessee into Indiana and Ohio. And that's given us just enough solar heating within that dry slot to get some convective towers going, and those stretch as far north as Dayton, South Bend, and Chicago up at the top of the screen. Further out east, we've got the main baroclinicity zone. This is going to be the occluded front, and we've got some deeper towers in that area. And then as we go further south, that gets into that area of cold air damming in the Carolinas and closer to the actual warm sector further south. So the cold front down here, the warm front running about like that. However, most of the convection does look forced. So probably not a whole lot going on except for just a little line of showers moving east. And there it is. No organized severe thunderstorms forecast. Looks like we've got a marginal risk area for Kentucky and Tennessee within that dry slot, and then further out east we see what just looks like forced showers, and that's continuing to move eastward. And it should be offshore later this evening. And that brings us to the 500 millibar heights and vorticity for this evening, showing a very channeled appearance. And by channeled, we mean that if we draw the jet in, it's going to be roughly like that. The vorticity lobes are pretty much parallel to that jet. The upper level ridge, there it is from Southern California up to North Dakota. And then in the southern U.S., just a giant trough with an upper level ridge on the east coast. So with the jet being along the Gulf Coast into the eastern U.S. like that, we go downstream from the trough and upstream from the ridge, and that's going to put our triple point in that area right there. So that's about where we find those fronts on the surface chart. And then everything north of there, that's going to be part of that occlusion going back into the vertically stacked cold core system in Illinois. Very classic example of that. And up in northern Montana, that looks like an advection lobe about to cut through this ridge, and then we should see that emerge down on the backside. And let's run that forward and see what that lobe does. So there it is emerging from the ridge, and it deepens as it gets into the base of that trough. So we're expecting some clouds in Texas and into the southeastern U.S., and that could develop into a small surface system down in this area here along the Gulf Coast. Here comes another system in the Pacific Northwest. That's going to deepen quite a bit and carve out this cutoff low in the southwestern U.S., and that's going to be kind of a potent system. We don't know the exact details since this is still about 120 hours out, but this should have a fairly big impact on weather in Arizona, Nevada, and California. Due to that strong southerly flow, that's going to bring moisture and warmth northward, and possibly some Santa Ana winds into Los Angeles. Anyway, we'll check out the details next week. And then eventually that cutoff low opens up, as it usually does eventually, and here comes another low coming into place down on the backside. So looks definitely unsettled in California for the remainder of the month. And this far out, we're not going to know the exact details. I think the weather is going to be a little bit unpredictable getting into the later part of the month, but we'll keep an eye on that. And this time of year, we do have to keep an eye on precipitable water. This is the total amount of water vapor integrated through a vertical column. And let's take a look at that. You can see on the west coast, a lot of moisture coming in. Those amounts are not particularly high, only talking about 3/4 to 1 inch, but that's enough for some rain. And then watch Texas right here. You can see with the outgoing high pressure system, that's going to get us into a southerly flow pattern on Monday. And then if we run that forward, some significant moisture works its way northward. And by Wednesday, we're looking at anywhere from 1.5 to 2 inches in much of Texas along and east of I-35. So that could mean thunderstorms at some point for Texas, kind of a stormy pattern, especially with that southwesterly flow aloft. And you can check out what happens over the following week. That moisture really doesn't go anywhere, so it looks like we're going to be stuck in kind of a warm pattern. Looks like toward the end of the sequence, some cold air does come southward. The front located about right in here. So it looks like there's some overrunning taking place over Texas. That could result in a spell of cold rain or wintry weather. But again, that's 300 hours out, so we're not going to worry about that too much. Well, I think that'll do it for this edition of Forecast Lab. I want to let you know that if you're a supporter, and here's how to do that. If you sign up, you'll get an automatic backstage pass, and we're going to show you a bit of a special perspective on how we put the videos together. So that's for supporters only. So give that some consideration, and you will rest easy knowing that you support this program. And for everybody else, we will see you on Tuesday. All right, have a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.